Okay, Carol Snell.
I have a poem today that I wrote in January 2019. It's called Super Blood Wolf Moon. I don't know how many of you stayed up to watch that. It went over a course of several hours, and it's the Earth coming in between the sun and the moon. So the Earth's shadow covers up the moon, and then when it was fully covered, it all turned red for reasons that I knew in January, but I can't remember now. But that I realized this was my muse, and I thought, well, if it takes a full eclipse of the moon with gold, with copper color, then I guess I'm not easily mused, right? But and then I decided to write it. I don't know. There's something about this eternal quality of this event that inspired me to write in some old-fashioned A-B rhyming scheme. Anyway. As this earth slips between moon and sun, the full eclipse has now begun. The question stark this frigid night, will hungry dark consume the light? O trickster moon, please ease our fear. Don't leave us freeze in blackness here. Blame not me, the moon replies. Your earth impedes my sun. If you are ruler of the skies, stop your shadows run. Helpless humans, movers, shakers, watch as powers pull. Sun and moon are promise breakers. The stolen light was full. Then diamond stars come into sight, stars that had always been, but when the moon was overbright, they'd struggled to be seen. Their spark ignites a lunar fire, whose thaw creates a flood, and as if hot with new desire, our moon now fills with blood. Seemingly without rehearsal, dramatis personae have made moves fine and universal across a boundless sky. 100 billion years from this, the gods and I will talk. The interval, that of a kiss on time's eternal clock. I don't know if you know this, Peter, but did you know that I have identical twin cousins named Larry and Gary?
I didn't know that. Or maybe
Yeah. Yeah. It is the truth, yes. Yes. And I can't imagine why anyone would do that to, especially to think that somebody in my own family would do that to two little boys. But I grabbed this off my bookshelf. I don't know, some of you may remember Peter Zofsky from Morningside. Younger people might not even remember Peter Zofsky even after that, because he died in the early 2000s. But I used to listen to Morningside quite often, and one day he had a debate between, I think it was 3 different couples. The debate was, how do you name your children? Do you give them the father's name? Do you give them the mother's name? Do you give the father's name to boys and maybe the mother's name if you have girls? Do you hyphenate your 2 names? Do you make up a totally different name for children? And I remember he had one of the people debating was a fellow named Tibor Ferengahatzi, which is a Hungarian name, and he was a theater director who I was familiar with. But when I heard Peter Zofsky give this debate, I was inspired. Didn't take a solar eclipse. I was inspired to write him a letter, which he later he read on the air and put in one of his collections. So, and this collection has 2 letters from people from Thomasburg. So considering the size of Thomasburg, that was pretty good. So I wrote, and they edited this and messed it up a little bit, so I'm trying to remember the original way it was. So in response to that item on his show, I wrote, Dear Peter, you should have asked me. I have the answer. and it is so simple and obvious, I'm disappointed in you not seeing it. Everyone should do what I did, marry someone with the same last name. Not only does my son Matthew have 2 Snell parents, he also has 4 Snell grandparents and numerous Snell aunts, uncles, and cousins on both sides of the family. Now, I realize this won't be easy, especially for the Zoskis and Feherengahatsis of this world. I took the precaution of marrying the first eligible Snell I could track down. Luckily, I found him lovable for other reasons. Your listeners may have the same experience, since I expect we are all well disposed to our namesakes. Because I expect that many will want to opt for my solution, I have a few prenuptial pointers to offer. Number 1, when having those questionable wedding invitations prepared, write a special note of reassurance to the printer. Number 2, when receiving the reply cards to your invitations, make very sure to distinguish between, for example, the groom's cousin and the bride's brother with identical names. Keep those envelopes. This is why Canada Post gave us the postmark. Use it. Number 3, when dealing with officials at City Hall, be patient. Assure them repeatedly that yes, you do understand the difference between birth and married names. This will take time. You may decide to forget the whole thing. As more of us choose this straightforward solution to the name game, it will become less remarkable. Until that time, however, be prepared to give the following answers constantly. No, we're not related, and yes, it's spelled the same way. Carol Snell, Snell, Thomasburg, Ontario.
Ken, Carol wants to tell her favorite Snell story.
When Matthew, you said about you grew up in Toronto, and you'd never met another king, even though it seems like that should be a name that might come up sometimes. When I moved from Toronto to Thomasburg, the culture shock was huge. And one thing that I had to understand was there's lots of people with the same names. You know, there are Tweed names and Thomasburg names, and I'd meet, I met somebody named Morton. I said, my next door neighbor is a Morton. Are you related? And said, oh yeah, probably. But, it was a totally different thing when I was growing up in Toronto. I didn't have any cousins named Snell. Peter Snell was the first other Snell I'd ever met. But when you marry somebody with the same name, then for one thing, trying to put the names in the phone book is hard because you've got too many S names to go in the one section. But it also has reverberations for the rest of the family too. And my brother, Steve Snell, was the vice principal at a high school in Ottawa. And it was the art school, the Canterbury Art School. So people came from all different areas. The kids were not just the neighborhood, they were from a wider range. And there was one family there that had originally been from Port Hope, where Peter's Snell family was from. And of course, my brother knew Peter's brother, and we're all Snells together. So one day there was an event at the school, and my brother Steve Snell, as vice principal, introduced himself and spoke to the audience. And afterwards, a parent of one of the students came up to him and said, your name is Snell. Are you related to Chris Snell? Well, that's from Port Hope. Well, that's Peter's brother. And my brother said, Chris Snell. Like brother of Peter Snell? Yeah. Son of Ed and Elizabeth Snell? Yeah. Nope, no relation. That's my favorite Snell story.